today's video I'm going to be talking about this particular Chapman ML-2 Standard. I'm going to briefly go over my history as far as owning and playing Chapman guitars, and hopefully it will give you an idea as to why Chapman guitars are significant to me. So I want to say it was around 2014 or 15, or maybe that's just when I jumped into it. It was when the main Korean line of Chapman guitars had just launched and it was their only series. They just had the ML-1, 2, 3, you know. At that time I had been watching a few Rob Chapman videos and I realized that he had a particular sense of not only tones but also playability. He seemed to really know what he was talking about. So from watching his videos, I had gained enough trust to believe that he could design a guitar that would actually play really well. So way back then, and you'll see, you know, years ago I did videos on it on my channel, I got an ML-2 from the original series that was a natural sapele finish from Korea. It was really, really high quality. So the significance of that guitar and of Chapman guitars to me as a player is that that ML-2 showed me that there were really, really good feeling and very, very well made guitars that were accessible financially. Prior to getting that first ML-2, I was basically going really, really long in the tooth on some sort of student level type quality guitars. And my belief back then was that in order to get a guitar that was really, really good, I would have to just go all the way up and get a Gibson, and I might as well not even bother with anything in between. I mean, don't get me wrong, you had like Schecter and ESP LTD, you know, those were sort of mid-price brands that were already being made in Korea in the same factory, but those guitars didn't really speak to me right away, mostly because of the bling factor. I didn't really like all the binding and sort of excessive inlays. I didn't really like a lot of the pickup choices that you could get on those at the time. And on top of that, when Chapman guitars first came out, they hit this price point that was like fairly affordable for a Korean-made guitar out of World Musical Instruments, because their finishes were very simple and they seemed to put all their focus into the feel of the neck, the playability of it, and the tone, even when they're using their own proprietary pickups. So long story short, that original ML-2 that I got sent me on a very, very long shopping spree that went on for months or a couple of years of just buying guitars left and right, once it had instilled the faith in me that I could find a good mid-level price guitar. Ultimately I landed with my 2015 Les Paul Studio as sort of an affordable high-end guitar that I finally landed on. But in the meantime I had bought several Chapmans. I had the ML-2, of course, I had an ML-1 from the original series that was in trans black. I had an ML-3 Modern that was also a natural sapele that was a really good guitar. I was just shooting all over that mid-level price point, you know, at that period of time. I had like a Schecter, I had an LTD, I had a couple of Strats. But then once that era had passed for me of just buying all these guitars, I ended up selling most of them off, including the Chapmans. The most recent Chapman that I parted ways with was an ML-1 from Korea with a Swamp Ash body that I gave away as a Christmas gift. And then when I got rid of that guitar, I really thought, well, I'll probably not be getting any more Chapmans anytime soon, because all I would really be interested in would be the Pro Series, and now they're extremely expensive. Some of those Pro Series are over $1,000. There's no way I would buy a Chapman for the same money as a Gibson. And also by then I had 3 Gibson Les Pauls and they're pretty much all I was playing. Also, this isn't news to anybody watching, but a couple years back they did split the Chapman guitars range. When the Pro Series went to super high specs that did become very expensive, they introduced the Standard range, which are made in Indonesia. They are about half the price of the Pro Series, give or take. But by the time that the Standard series came out, I just wasn't really interested, because I thought, well, why would I want to get something that's probably not as good just by the nature of it? And, you know, it would have had to just be for the sake of a video, and at that point I was kind of fed up with getting guitars just to do videos, because I had lost quite a bit of money on trading them in, to be honest. Also, I kind of assumed that being an Indonesian-made, like metal style guitar, that they were going to be very similar in quality to like an Indonesian LTD, which are the cheaper ones, and I wasn't really, you know, very excited about it. I just thought, great, it'll get students into, you know, the Chapman brand, because the other ones have now become so expensive. So I wasn't against it, but I wasn't particularly interested in the Standard series. So this guitar is actually my first experience with any Standard series Chapman. Being an ML-2, it does still have a set neck. This one's actually not even a V2. This is from their first Indonesian run, which I know some people had complaints about, but this guitar really surprised me in terms of the quality of it. There are a few aspects where this guitar falls short of the Pro Series. Obviously, their proprietary materials on the Standard Series are not as good as the Pro Series, and often the Pro Series will use like Grover tuners anyway. But the Chapman tuners are not as good. The bridge and tailpiece don't feel quite as good. I don't know why. They feel a little bit more light, maybe a little bit more tinny. I don't know if that's just a perception that I'm getting, but they do feel not quite as good. Also, I actually do like that this one has a tailpiece, whereas my original ML2 from Korea had a string through. I actually prefer a tailpiece. And I would want to say that the electronics don't feel as good on this, but they do feel pretty good. So overall, I was very pleasantly surprised. It has a Macassar ebony, not to be confused with Madagascar ebony, which is brutal. So it's a little bit more sustainable fretboard wood, but it is still a subspecies of ebony. So it does feel really good. The frets feel really good. And I'm very happy to report that even on the Standard Series, this has a very, very smooth, like rolled, slightly rolled feeling fretboard. Very, very smooth fretwork. Really, really smooth frets. There's maybe a little bit of tooling marks on one of the frets somewhere, but it took me a long time to notice it, and I don't really notice it playing. I just happened to notice it when I had the strings off. But basically, no guitar, even if it was brand new, was going to be perfect, and I got this one used, so who knows. But I was very, very happy to see that they put so much effort and care into the fretwork on, so I guess you could say now that Chapman occupies the low and high end of the mid-price market, if that makes sense. So this is by no means a beginner guitar, although it would make a great beginner guitar because it's so easy to play. But basically, the point is it feels really nice to play. So the question is why, since I said I was giving up on Chapmans and only playing Gibsons for a while, why do I have this guitar in the first place? So what I'll actually do kind of semi-regularly, maybe twice a week on average, is I'll just browse through a bunch of used guitar listings, and what I'm looking for is basically a really good deal on something. Not necessarily that I'm in the market for a guitar at any given time, but I'm always looking. Those who watch my channel know I've been kind of on an ongoing search for a really good deal on a Telecaster, but I have yet to find a really good deal on one. But usually what I'll do is I'll look at guitars in the $350 price range, which would include a steel on a really good Telecaster or a steel on a really good Stratocaster, and then I'll look at guitars in like the $600 to $700 range, which would be looking for something like a steel on a Les Paul, or basically just anything that would catch my interest in those price ranges that wouldn't be, you know, a brutal financial hit. So anyway, as I was looking through my $350 price range search results, looking basically for a Strat or a Tele, I found this. And a lot of these Standard Series Chapmans do come in used around $350, so that's not a particularly good deal. But in general, that's a hell of a deal versus buying something like an Epiphone. Get a used Chapman. And that's coming from a Gibson fanatic. I would get this all day long over an Epiphone. And quite honestly, the only thing that caught my attention about this and made me click on the listing to begin with was the flame top on this particular one. It has a really, really highly figured top, and I probably shouldn't be doing this video at night with somewhat poor lighting because this guitar really does have a top that stands out. And so basically I clicked on the listing just to admire the flame top. I didn't think there was really any reasonable chance that I would buy it. I just wanted to look at the top and think, wow, that's interesting. And stop, by the way, I know it's not a flame top, it's a flame veneer, okay? It's a veneer. It's a very, very thin piece of wood that achieves that at a very cheap price. So I keep saying top because I'm used to it, but it's a flame veneer. So I clicked on this just to look at the pictures and admire the veneer, and I saw a picture of it from the back. That is what really stopped me when I realized this guitar was actually signed by Rob Chapman and Rabia Masad. Now, in the listing that they had, they didn't disclose that it was signed, probably because they didn't have any proof. They didn't have anything to verify that. But having seen Rabia's signature before, I knew that's what it was. And then on Rob's signature, I looked up a bunch of pictures of ones that were verified, and it does look exactly like that, and it looks like just basically the Rob portion of the Rob Chapman Guitars logo in a sense. So on the back of the headstock, you have Rob 2018 and then Bia, signed in Sharpie, and just very, very cool. I mean, there's no mistaking it, those two signatures. So while there's no official verification for it, I know it's legit. Now this guitar came to me from California, so I imagine there was either some kind of a NAMM show or some other West Coast event where there was an opportunity for a fan to get this signed. Also, I do want to say that I appreciate the previous owner for basically curating the coolest looking flame veneer ML2, getting it signed. It's not a Pro Series, so it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. So whoever put this together has really good taste. So obviously I'm a fan of Rob Chapman, and I think it's really cool to have a guitar that is actually hand-signed by the founder of the company. I think that Chapman guitars will have some historical significance when people look back on it. But hopefully I don't have to sell this because I think it's just cool as an item to own personally. And I've said this before, but Rabia Masad is one of my favorite players. He has a really fresh style, very rhythmic, very groovy, but heavy. I'm sure you've already heard of him if you're watching this video, but if not, go check him out. He has a YouTube channel. He has a band Tosca, Dorje, as well as Rob Chapman is in the band Dorje. But anyway, that's why I bought this Standard Series Chapman after not even expecting to buy any more Korean ones. Basically, I love the fact that it's signed. I love how the top looks, and I just couldn't pass it up. I do recognize that I probably won't spend very much time playing this guitar, but that being said, this is probably the only guitar which I've actually bought fully knowing I may not play it very much, and just for the collectability of it, or just being kind of a cool item to have. And anyway, it is way better quality than I expected. I could see myself picking this up for a jam here and there, just because it just feels so good to play. It's very surprising. Another interesting thing is that the neck on this guitar is definitely bigger than my original Korean one. It's hard to describe. It's still a very even sort of halfway between a C and a D shape, but on my original ML2, the reason I got rid of that one is because the neck was so small. And on this one, it is definitely a bit bigger, which I'm very, very grateful for. I'm surprised because you'd think on more of a student-focused series, being the Standard Series, that they would want a smaller neck, but obviously they didn't, because, or maybe this one's just particularly big. A lot of necks are just hand sanded anyway. But I like that the neck is a bit bigger than my original one. That definitely makes me want to play this, whereas if I still had the original one, I wouldn't be playing it, and that's why I don't have it anymore. And while the pickups in this are definitely not as good as the Korean series or the Pro series, or even the V2s obviously, it does have some nice tones for what it is. It has coil tapping, it has volume, and a tone with coil tap, three-way switch. Not a terrible control layout, although not what I would prefer, obviously. But anyway, here is a quick run through of some tones. guys for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to share it and subscribe, and I will see you next time.